Most people only saw the moment he flipped into the spotlight in Abu Dhabi, a perfect arc through the air, thousands screaming like they were watching a superstar at the peak of his power. But the truth behind that moment is much stranger. Because just hours earlier, Benson Boone could barely keep his eyes open. He'd landed in the UAE with almost no sleep, running on adrenaline, caffeine, and whatever energy a rising star digs out of the corners of his mind when there's no option but to perform. And somehow, instead of slowing him down, that exhaustion created one of the most intense nights of his career. What happened on that stage wasn't luck. It wasn't just talent, either. It was the result of a chain reaction that started months before, long before the lights, the crowd, and the roaring engines of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. That flip marked the beginning of a performance that would redefine how fans saw him, and it hinted at something deeper happening behind the scenes. Because Benson Boone didn't just show up to sing that night, he arrived with a story that almost didn't happen. And to understand why that moment hit so hard, you have to look at how fast everything around him was spiraling, and how a single viral performance pushed him into a world where every show felt bigger, riskier, and more demanding than the last. The real story starts long before the stage lights came on, but what happened next would change his momentum forever. When Benson Boone stepped onto the stage at Etihad Park, the crowd had no idea what shape he was actually in. From the outside, he looked unstoppable. Calm face, steady posture, all red racing outfit catching the lights like he'd planned this moment for months. But behind that confidence was a body running on fumes. He had flown into Abu Dhabi just the day before, crossing time zones so quickly that his mind and muscles were still fighting to figure out what continent they were on. He admitted to fans earlier that he was completely jet-lagged, but the second he took that first step into the spotlight, it was as if his exhaustion evaporated. And then he did something no one expected from someone who could barely stay awake a few hours earlier. He flipped. Not a safe little hop, not a half commitment, but a full, clean, show-starting flip that sent the entire audience into shock. It wasn't just athletic, it was symbolic. It was a kind of move you pull when you're trying to tell an entire arena, "I'm here, and you're going to remember this." The wild part is that he didn't even warm up for it. No stretching backstage, no practice run. He just went for it, trusting his body to follow through even when his brain was still catching up to the time zone. For the fans closest to the stage, that flip set the tone instantly. They screamed like they had just witnessed the opening scene of a career-defining moment, and in a way, they had. Because it didn't just introduce the concert, it exposed the intensity he carries into every performance. Jet lag or not, he wasn't going to step on that stage halfway. He was going to rip the energy out of thin air and make it look effortless. But here's the part nobody saw. That flip wasn't just a crowd pleaser. It was a warning shot. Because everything that led up to this moment, the sleepless flights, the pressure of sudden stardom, the whirlwind pace he was struggling to keep up with, was building towards something bigger. And Abu Dhabi was only the beginning, but this wasn't just a cool stunt, it was the spark for a story that had already been unfolding long before the crowd even arrived. When you trace it back, the real momentum didn't start on that stage. It started months earlier, at a moment that would completely reshape his trajectory, a moment that sent his name flying across the internet faster than he ever could have predicted. Long before the bright lights of Abu Dhabi, there was a different stage, one that would flip Benson Boone's entire career upside down in a single afternoon. Coachella, the place where careers are made, shattered, or forgotten within minutes. And during that festival, something happened that even Boone didn't see coming. He walked onto that desert stage as an up-and-coming artist with a loyal fan base, and walked off as the name everyone suddenly needed to Google.at first. It looked like any other festival performance. Sun blazing, crowds shifting between stages, thousands of people watching with casual curiosity. But the second Boone opened his mouth, something changed. His voice hit the air with this clarity that cut straight through the noise, and almost instantly, phones shot up from every direction. Clips spread online faster than wildfire, his high notes looping on TikTok, fans stitching reactions, influencers reposting like they discovered the next major breakout. Within hours, he wasn't just promising, he was viral. And once that momentum started, there was no slowing it down. Streams spiked, search numbers jumped, promoters started calling. Suddenly, Boone wasn't planning his next month, He was planning around a new reality where everything was happening at once. Coachella didn't just give him attention. It shoved him onto a global stage with audiences demanding more than he had ever been asked to give. That wave of sudden fame was thrilling, but it also pushed him into a non-stop schedule that would test every part of him. Interviews, rehearsals, flights, meetings, and the pressure to prove he wasn't just a one viral moment wonder. He had to level up fast, faster than most artists ever have to. And every new opportunity came with a cost. Less sleep, more travel, higher expectations, and a growing sense that he was now playing in a league where any misstep could be magnified. By the time Abu Dhabi called, he was already riding months of that chaotic momentum. It explains why he arrived exhausted, and why he refused to let that exhaustion show. Coachella didn't just change his career, it set a new pace he was still trying to keep up with, and that pressure was already showing by the time he landed in the UAE, because the version of Benson Boone walking around backstage at Yas Marina didn't look anything like the unstoppable performer the world thought they knew. Hours before the crowd roared his name, Benson Boone wasn't glowing with stage energy or bouncing around with pre-show adrenaline. He looked almost like a completely different person, quieter, slower, and carrying the kind of exhaustion that settles behind the eyes. When he arrived at Yas Marina circuit, there were no flashing lights or screaming fans, just the hum of the paddocks and the calm before the Formula One chaos. And in that quiet, the real toll of the past few months finally showed itself. He wandered through the paddock area, meeting racing teams and fans who happened to recognize him, but he wasn't doing the usual celebrity routine. There was no over-the-top charm or exaggerated excitement, just a subdued version of himself trying to stay present while his body begged for rest. Constant flights, endless rehearsals, and back-to-back performances had stretched him thin, and the stillness of the circuit made it impossible to hide it. Even so, there were moments when the performer inside him slipped through. When he was asked to pose in front of the glambot, the same dramatic slow-motion camera used at award shows, something clicked. His posture straightened, his expression sharpened, and he spun into a clean, practiced twirl that would have made Freddie Mercury proud. It was instinct, muscle memory. Even drained, his sense of showmanship triggered the second the camera rolled, but once the shutter stopped, he fell right back into that softer, almost reflective state. This wasn't the high-energy Boone fans imagined backstage. This was someone trying to balance the weight of rapid fame with the physical reality of non-stop work. And yet, watching him move through the paddocks, you could tell he was saving something, holding a spark back for the moment it mattered most. The track itself almost seemed to mirror his mood. Teams were preparing in silence, engines rested, mechanics focused on details instead of speed. It was a day built on calm, the kind that feels like it's storing energy for something explosive later. And Boone was doing the same, because when the sun went down and the concert began, the subdued artist roaming the paddocks vanished, replaced by a showman who channeled every ounce of pressure, exhaustion, and expectation into a performance that felt larger than anything he'd done before. When Benson Boone finally stepped onto that massive Etihad Park stage, something unexpected happened. Something that fans, critics, and even casual observers all picked up on instantly. The way he held himself, the confidence in his stance, the way he commanded space without saying a word, it all carried a strange familiarity. Not imitation, not parody, but a spark of the same electricity that defined one of the greatest performers of all time, Freddie Mercury. It didn't start on stage, either. The first hint appeared hours earlier in that quiet paddock moment with the glambot. Most artists freeze up or overthink when a high-speed camera swings toward them. Boone didn't. Despite being exhausted and barely talking minutes before, he snapped into character the instant he felt the lens lock onto him. He straightened his back, lifted his chin, and delivered a clean, dramatic twirl that looked like it belonged on a red carpet. It wasn't rehearsed, it just came out of him, naturally, the way showmanship sometimes chooses the artist rather than the other way around. By the time the concert began, that energy had spread through every part of his performance. He stood tall at the microphone, shoulders squared, finger pointed out into the sea of fans like he was guiding them into the night. It was the kind of presence that makes an arena feel smaller, not because the crowd shrinks, but because the performer expands. Older fans saw it immediately, that quiet command, that fearless stance, that subtle, almost playful arrogance. And younger fans felt it even if they didn't recognize the reference. They reacted to the confidence, the charisma, the way Boone made each movement feel intentional. But the Mercury comparison wasn't just about posture. It was about range, emotional and musical. Boone could shift from tender to explosive within seconds, letting his vocals rise from soft cracks to soaring notes that cut through the warm Abu Dhabi air. It was the kind of dynamic control that grabs people by the chest and doesn't let go. And yet, it wasn't copycat energy. Boone wasn't trying to be anyone else. What made the comparison fascinating was how unforced it felt. It was as if the pressure of rapid fame, the exhaustion, and the adrenaline had peeled back a layer of his stage persona, revealing a more fearless version of himself, one willing to take risks, push harder, and own the moment with a level of conviction usually seen in artists far deeper into their careers. The Freddie Mercury echoes didn't overshadow Boone. If anything, they amplified him. They framed him as someone evolving, someone stepping into a bigger artistic identity than his earlier work hinted at. And the crowd sensed it. They weren't just watching a singer. They were watching someone transform in real time. And when the music kicked in, that transformation exploded into full force, turning the opening songs into a statement that Benson Boone wasn't just rising, he was redefining what his rise looked like. When the lights finally dropped over Etihad Park, the quiet, drained Benson Boone from earlier in the day disappeared like he'd never existed. In his place stood someone sharper, louder, and fully charged, a version of himself that looked ready to ignite the entire Grand Prix weekend. Clad in an all-red racing outfit that reflected the F1 energy pulsing through the city, he stepped into the spotlight as if he belonged there, as if the stage had been built for him and him alone. The reaction was immediate. Younger fans screamed with a kind of intensity normally reserved for pop icons at their peak, the kind of uncontrollable excitement that comes from seeing someone who feels larger than life. To them, he wasn't just Benson Boone, he was a phenomenon, a male Taylor Swift moment unfolding right in front of their eyes. But it wasn't just the younger crowd caught in the wave. Older fans, the ones with decades of concerts behind them, felt something too. They caught flashes of Freddie Mercury in the way he commanded the stage, and hints of Brandon Flowers in the tone of his voice, that mix of power and vulnerability that could shift the mood of an entire crowd in seconds. And Boone wasted no time tapping into that momentum. The instant the first notes hit, he launched into a performance that felt explosive from the first breath. His vocals were crisp, soaring, and effortlessly controlled despite the exhaustion he'd been carrying all day. Every gesture, every step, every glance toward the crowd felt amplified by pure adrenaline. It was as if all the pressure of the past months condensed into one moment, giving him a level of force and presence that surprised even longtime followers of his music. The connection between him and the audience snapped together instantly. When he raised his arm, the crowd raised theirs. When he leaned into a note, they leaned with him. The entire park felt like it was moving in sync with his heartbeat, and the more energy he gave, the more the fans pushed back at him like a tidal wave. By the end of the first song, the entire venue was electrified, a wall of sound, lights, and emotion that even seasoned performers struggled to create. What made it even more intense was how natural it all looked. There was no hesitation, no second-guessing, no sign that this was a man who had been quietly wandering the paddocks just hours earlier, trying to fight through jet lag. On stage, he was unstoppable. He had flipped the switch completely, from quiet observer to full-blown star, and the transformation felt almost cinematic. But hidden inside all that noise and excitement was a deeper shift. This performance wasn't just about entertaining a crowd. It was about proving something, that his rise wasn't accidental, that his viral moment wasn't a fluke, and that he could carry a stage of this scale with the same force as artists who had spent decades mastering it. And the songs he chose next only pushed that message further, revealing a version of Benson Boone who was evolving with every track, every note, and every breath he delivered into the warm Abu Dhabi night. As the night surged forward, Benson Boone didn't just perform, he revealed pieces of who he was becoming with every song he chose. Each track acted like a chapter in a story he hadn't fully told yet, and the crowd didn't just listen, they absorbed it. This wasn't the polished, predictable set list of an artist coasting on a viral moment. It was the sound of someone stretching, testing his limits, and proving that his rise wasn't a lucky break but the result of something deeper and far more deliberate. He opened the next portion of the show with "I Wanna Be the One You Call," a breezy rock-pop track that wastes no time showing off the clarity and reach of his upper register. The moment he hit that soaring chorus, the audience erupted like they already knew every word by heart. It wasn't just a sing-along, it felt like an initiation, a shared declaration between Boone and the thousands packed into Etihad Park. His vocals cut clean through the night air, sharp and confident, like he was marking the territory as his own. Then he shifted into Wanted Man, and the energy swung in a completely different direction. The strutting bass line hit first, pulsing under the stage like an engine revving to life, followed by Boone's crystalline falsetto weaving through the mix. The song felt punchy, bold, almost dangerous in its swagger. He moved differently during this one, less polished, more instinctive, tapping into a charisma that hadn't been as defined earlier in his career. It was the kind of performance that signaled growth, not just in vocal control but in attitude. He wasn't simply singing, he was claiming space, but the real turning point came with "Sorry I'm Here for Someone Else." The track's zippy, synth-fueled rush hit the crowd like a jolt. There was a giddy brightness to it, a kind of controlled chaos that felt tailor-made for the Abu Dhabi night. And as soon as Boone launched into the melody, the entire park shifted. It was like the song flicked a switch inside the venue. Fans jumped, screamed, and danced with a kind of collective electricity that artists spend years trying to unlock. This was the moment the show truly lifted off. The song didn't just land, it detonated. What made these performances so revealing wasn't just how polished they sounded. It was how effortlessly he moved between moods, riding the emotional spectrum like an artist fired deeper into his career. Soft vulnerability, sharp confidence, explosive energy. He played with each tone as if he'd already mastered them. The songs weren't just hits, they were evidence. Proof that Benson Boone was evolving, growing, and stepping into a higher tier of artistry right before the crowd's eyes. And as the final notes of that segment echoed across Etihad Park, it became clear. This wasn't the same young artist fans had discovered months earlier. This was someone leveling up in real time, someone preparing for something even bigger. And that evolution wasn't slowing down, because what came next would push him even further into the spotlight, raising new questions about how long he could maintain a pace this intense. By the time Benson Boone stepped off that Abu Dhabi stage, the crowd was still vibrating with the energy he left behind. But for Boone, there was barely any time to take in what he'd just pulled off. That's the reality of his life now. No pauses, no slow mornings, no long decompressions after a massive show. The moment one performance ends, the countdown to the next one begins. And this relentless pace didn't appear out of nowhere. It's the natural consequence of a career that shot upward faster than almost anyone expected. After Coachella sent his name spiraling across the internet, everything around him accelerated. His US tour sold out in less than 5 minutes, an unheard of speed for someone still considered new by industry standards. Then Europe followed, disappearing just as quickly. Each announcement brought a flood of excitement, but behind every celebration was another challenge. More travel, more rehearsals, more interviews, more eyes watching to see if he'd stumble under the weight of his own momentum. And the truth is, momentum like this doesn't care if you're tired. It doesn't wait for you to adjust. It kept pushing, and Boone had no choice but to push with it. Abu Dhabi wasn't just another show. It was part of a pattern, a non-stop chain of commitments pulling him around the world faster than his body could keep up. The jet lag, the drained appearance backstage, the sudden bursts of stage brilliance, all of it was a product of someone riding a wave that refused to break. Even in the quiet moments, wandering the Yas Marina paddocks, sharing casual conversations with fans, trying to soak in the calm before the roar, there was an undeniable tension. He wasn't just performing for entertainment anymore. He was performing to meet the expectations of thousands of people who had watched his rise and decided he was worth believing in. That kind of pressure follows you everywhere, even into the stillest corners of a racetrack. But what makes Boone's journey so compelling is that he isn't shrinking under the pressure. If anything, he's expanding with it. The stronger the momentum becomes, the more he seems determined to prove he can handle it. Each performance builds on the last. Each tour announcement grows bigger. Each night in front of a crowd adds another layer to the artist is becoming. Still, there's a lingering question beneath all the excitement, a quieter thought that fans and insiders can't help but wonder. How long can someone move at this speed before the pressure catches up? How long can talent and adrenaline outpace exhaustion? And how far can he push before he reaches a limit no one sees coming? Because if Abu Dhabi proved anything, it's that Benson Boone is running at full throttle, and the world is watching to see whether this momentum turns into a breakthrough or a breaking point. When the final echoes of Benson Boone's voice drifted into the warm Abu Dhabi night, it wasn't just the end of a performance. It was the end of a chapter in a story that's unfolding faster than even he can fully process. Hours earlier, he was a jet-lagged artist wandering a quiet paddock, caught somewhere between exhaustion and determination. But the moment he stepped onto that stage, everything shifted. He became the version of himself the world has been waiting to see, sharper, louder, bolder, and willing to push past every limit in his path. That opening flip wasn't just a stunt. It was a message, a sign that even when he's running on fumes, Boone refuses to hold back. His voice soared, his presence expanded, and the crowd responded with the kind of energy artists spend years chasing. And yet, behind all the lights and noise was a truth just as powerful, the understanding that this rise didn't happen by chance. Coachella, the sold-out tours, the comparisons to legends, the explosive Grand Prix debut. Each moment pushed him toward a place where expectations are sky-high and the pace never slows. That he's not simply becoming a star, he's becoming the kind of artist whose story people follow as closely as his music. Someone whose smallest decisions ripple outward, shaping how fans see him and how the industry measures him. But the question that hangs over all of it is the same one his Abu Dhabi performance quietly asked. What happens next? How far can he keep pushing himself? How much bigger can these moments become? And at what point does the pressure turn into something else entirely? Because if this night proved anything, it's that Benson Boone is in the middle of a transformation, one driven by talent, momentum, and a level of intensity that refuses to let him slow down. And for everyone watching, the real intrigue isn't just how high he can climb, it's what he'll reveal when he gets there.